Hello, everybody. How's it going? This is Kevin Asani, and you are watching the Progressive Square. So glad to have you guys joining me today. And we have a packed show for you guys. Some interesting topics to talk about, as usual. Before we get started, I just want to let you guys know, don't forget to check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/progblacksmith. If you can become a patron and give me a generous contribution, it would be greatly appreciated. Also, for more information about this podcast, check out the Prog Square, hashtag the Prog Square on Twitter. That will direct you to all of my live broadcasts on Periscope, as well as every segment I post on YouTube. All right, let's get things going here with the first segment. Bernie Sanders, he obviously is a proponent of Medicare-for-all. He has been championing that cause for years now, as everybody knows. So he naturally has to fight off a lot of the people that attack it and criticize it and say untrue things about it. So that seems to be the case regarding Joe Biden, because recently Joe Biden has been going after Medicare for all, making up lies that are not true. So I'm going to go through a couple of articles for you guys here that details exactly what's going on regarding the misinformation out there about Medicare for all. So the first article we got here is from Common Dreams. It's from a writer that I've read his articles multiple times here on this podcast. His name is Jake Johnson, and he. So the title of his article here is "Sanders Accuses Biden of Parroting Pharma and Insurance Industry Script with Attacks on Medicare for All." And I guess this is quoting Bernie Sanders here in the subtext, in the subheadline. It says, "At a time when Donald Trump and the health insurance industry are lying every day about Medicare for all, I would hope that my fellow Democrats would not resort to misinformation about my legislation." So let's get to the body of the article now. It says, Senator Bernie Sanders on Sunday accused 2020 Democratic presidential rival Joe Biden of parroting insurance and pharmaceutical industry talking points after the former vice president raised alarm about the supposedly high price tag of Medicare for all and suggested the transition to a single-payer system would leave people with gaps in health care coverage. Campaigning in New Hampshire on Saturday, Biden said he wants to expand the Affordable Care Act and add a public option, claiming such incremental steps wouldn't cost $3 trillion and it can be done quickly. "I don't know why we'd get rid of what in fact is working and move to something totally new," Biden said. "And so there are differences." Medicare for All advocates, including Sanders, the lead sponsor of the Medicare for All Act of 2019 in the Senate, argue that the ACA is not working, pointing to the tens of millions of Americans who are uninsured or underinsured. And then here, Bernie calls out Biden for his absurd attacks. It says, in an interview with the New York Times on Sunday, Sanders called Biden's attacks on Medicare for all totally absurd. Obviously, what Biden was doing is what the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical industries, Republicans, do, ignoring the fact that people will save money on their health care because they will no longer have to pay premiums or out-of-pocket expenses, said the Vermont senator. They will no longer have high deductibles and high co-payments. The charge that he's making, Sanders added, is exactly what the Republicans are saying. And then here's some more stupidity from Biden. Biden's remarks in New Hampshire capped off several days of attacks on Medicare for All by the former vice president, even as polling released last week showed that 2/3 of Democratic voters support moving to a single-payer system that abolishes private insurance. In a CNN interview published online today, Biden, who came under fire in April for attending a fundraiser hosted by a health insurance CEO just hours after launching his 2020 presidential bid, said it would be a sin to attempt to replace the ACA with Medicare for All. Following that remark, Medicare for All advocates pounced on Biden's characterization of the proposal. On Friday, Biden told the crowd in New Hampshire that while Medicare for All proponents mean well, he doesn't want to start over. Quoting him here, it says, "How many of you out there have had someone you've lost to cancer, or cancer yourself? No time, man," said Biden. "We cannot have a hiatus of 6 months, a year, 2, 3 to get something done." Sanders responded to Biden's comments in a statement on Saturday and announced that he will confront the Democratic opponents of Medicare for All in greater detail in a speech in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. At a time when Donald Trump and the health insurance industry are lying every day about Medicare for All, Sanders said, "I would hope that my fellow Democrats would not resort to misinformation about my legislation." That's the same thing, that was the same quote from Bernie that was in the subheadline too. So the senator continues here. "Here are the facts. Under Medicare for All, over a 4-year period, we will transition to a system in which Medicare is expanded to cover every man, woman, and child in the country. It is preposterous to argue that as we expand Medicare for All, that people with cancer and other illnesses will not get the care that they need. In fact, under Medicare for All, the good news is that we will end the horror of millions of people going into bankruptcy and financial distress simply because they need hospital care for serious conditions. We have a healthcare crisis in this country. Every day Americans die because they cannot afford the healthcare they desperately need, while the CEOs of insurance and drug companies get rich off of their suffering. We cannot continue to tinker around the edges while 80 million Americans lack health insurance or are underinsured with high premiums, copays, and deductibles." So yeah, that's a great breakdown of what Bernie said there, and that last quote there was excellent. Typical Bernie Sanders, just getting to the meat of the details, laying it out very simply for everybody to understand, and basically debunking all the bullshit that's coming from the likes of Joe Biden, who's basically just a prostitute for the health insurance industry and big donors, the CEOs and stuff that run the different, health insurance companies and, pharmaceutical companies and all that stuff, let alone all the, big banks and other fucking, rich ass donors that give money to candidates like Biden. He's not the only one. So that was, that's Bernie laid it out very well there, and that's something that we'll obviously always expect from him, and he always delivers. But I wanted to read you guys another piece here. This one is from Huffington Post, and this one actually gets much more into detail, or at least the author gets much more into detail about how what Joe Biden is doing is he is scaremongering, or doing a meta-scare. So he's scaring people about Medicare for All, essentially. Not just Medicare for All, but Medicare. And he's scaring older voters, into thinking that if Medicare for All is implemented, all the people that are on Medicare, which are the old people, they're going to lose their Medicare. Which is bullshit, because the whole idea for Medicare for All is to insure all Americans, not just this American or that American. And just because you're insuring them all doesn't mean you're going to take away healthcare from anybody. So that's bullshit. But anyway, so let's get into the detail of the article here. Before I do, I obviously want to read the headline here. It says, "Biden mimics GOP fear-mongering in his attacks on Medicare for All." And the subheadline says, all the Medicare you have is gone, the former vice president told an AARP audience of what would happen under a Medicare for All plan. And like I said, this article is from Huffington Post. The author is Jeffrey Young. And let's see what Jeffrey Young he writes here. So it says, if some of former Vice President Joe Biden's talking points against Medicare for All sound familiar, they should. He borrowed them from Republicans. It's not just that Biden's healthcare platform is less progressive than those of his rivals, especially Bernie Sanders, nor is it simply that Biden holds centrist views about the value of competition and choice in the insurance market. It's worse. At a forum sponsored by the AARP and the Des Moines Register in Iowa, Biden trotted out scare tactics about healthcare reform that would make President Donald Trump proud. That's a good analogy there. Or characterization. And then here's some more scaremongering from Biden, as the author notes. It says, first, Biden promoted his plan, which also would significantly increase the government's role in health coverage by creating a public option to compete with private insurers, and would provide much more generous financial assistance to people covered by policies from the Affordable Care Act's health insurance exchanges. Unlike Sanders' Medicare for All plan, however, Biden's would leave the private health insurance market intact. Then Biden began to make the case against Medicare for All. It rested largely on trying to scare old people, a tactic Republicans frequently use to whip up anxiety about any Democratic plan to reform the healthcare system. Quoting, is this Biden here? Yeah, it's quoting Biden here. It says, Medicare goes away as you know it. All the Medicare you have is gone, Biden said as he leaned down toward moderator Kathy Abrodovich from the Des Moines Register for effect. The transition of dropping 300 million people on a new plan, totally new, is, I think, kind of a little risky at this point. But then you would never want to do that. It's not like all of a sudden like you would like get around to just wanting to do that. So claiming it's risky at this point is just... it's obviously a stall tactic, so you can pretend you're in favor of giving people health care when you're just trying to keep people on insurance, essentially. And continuing on here, it says, as a point of fact, the Medicare program envisioned under Medicare for All is not the program as it exists today. Unlike what Biden insinuated, however, it would have more generous benefits and little to no out-of-pocket spending. Senior citizens, like everyone else, would be enrolled in a single-payer national health care program. This attack utilizes classic Republican Medicare tactics designed to foment discontent among older Americans that anyone else's gains come at their expense. Trump himself published an op-ed last October in USA Today under the headline, Donald Trump, Democrats, Medicare for All will demolish promises to seniors. In the op-ed, Trump makes a number of false and exaggerated claims about Medicare for All, but it's this line that's most in sync with Biden's rhetoric. Quoting Trump from the op-ed, it says, the Democratic Party's so-called Medicare for All would really be Medicare for none. Medicare for none has become a favored talking point in recent months for Republicans like Trump and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky. Biden should recognize this fear-mongering strategy because McConnell and others used it extensively when President Barack Obama was working to enact the Affordable Care Act in 2009 and 2010, and continued to use it to criticize the law. For a candidate so fixated on protecting Obamacare and an ex-vice president who claims partial credit for Obama's legislative success on healthcare reform, it's jarring to hear him parrot those attacks now. Yeah, so true. And the last part here goes into how Biden has basically been doing this for a while now. It says, perhaps worse still was Biden's suggestion that sick people could be hurt during the 4-year transition from the current health coverage system to a new Medicare for All program. Biden asked members of the audience to raise their hands if they'd ever lost a loved one to a terminal illness. Every second counts. It's not about a year. It's about the day, the week, the month, the next 6 months, he said. The truth of the matter is it's likely to be a bumpy ride getting to where we're going. Biden has been using variations of this line at public events and during press interviews in recent weeks. And the subtext is pretty obvious. Be afraid of Medicare for all because you might die from it. It's an aspersion straight out of 2008 vice presidential nominee. 2008 Republican vice presidential nominee Sarah Palin's heinous death panel's playbook. So that's so ironic, isn't it? As this author details in this great article I just read for you guys. It's so ironic that Biden is ironically using the same attacks that was used against Obama when he was pushing Obamacare, which was obviously not a socialist takeover plan. It was nothing like Medicare for all at all. At best, it was a public option, and they were using these tactics against that weak ass legislation and saying that Medicare is going to be gone forever and people are going to lose their insurance and if people remember from the Tea Party protests, the Tea Party protesters were holding up signs that says take your government hands off our Medicare, when in reality Medicare is government run. So how would you take your government hands off people's Medicare? And that was used in the context of the government is going to take away. So in other words, take the hands off our Medicare meant don't take away our Medicare. But the government runs Medicare, so Medicare is it's a government program. So that never made any sense. But yeah, it's crazy how opportunistic and sleazy Joe Biden is. He just can't help himself. He's so desperate, to push for policies that, are going to benefit his donors and the rich people that obviously give him money and, that are going to be pissed about what's going to happen under a, Bernie Sanders type system. And this is what he resorts to. And yeah, it's really, really sad. I wouldn't think he would stoop that low. And I think even something like this, I think even Obama would respond to something like this and be like, listen, Joe, this is not a good idea. You're not going down the right path here by trying to frame Medicare for all as if it's going to be taking away Medicare from the people that already have it. So, and then to think that Trump and Biden are sounding so similar. I mean, like the author said, this is something that Trump would be proud to hear. This is just like what you would hear from Donald Trump. And I mean, obviously Biden doesn't have any shame. He just wants to get, this is something Kyle Klinsky of Secular Talk has mentioned, but it just seems like Joe Biden wants to get elected for the sole purpose of having that label of I'm president and I was vice president before and now I'm president. So it's all a career path for these politicians to basically brag about being being at a certain level, right? So to show oh, look what I've done. I've created this wonderful legacy for myself where I'm president, but even though I'm doing it through the guise of essentially lying and making shit up, which obviously every politician does. But in this case, when you're taking the playbook of the Republican Party, it's even more shameful. And I didn't think Biden would go that low because I didn't think he was that desperate. But, as we've seen, and I think I pointed it out before, Kyle's, pointed it out, the more Joe Biden talks, the more he gives speeches, the more he's in public, the more he embarrasses himself. I mean, look how bad he did in the debate. He got absolutely, smacked over the head, bitch slapped by the likes of Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders and everything, so it made him look like a complete fool. And obviously that's what he continues to do. And now he's just so desperate to maintain that tiny lead, which is getting, shrinking, that tiny lead he has in the polls. And eventually people are going to want to, they're going to want to migrate towards a different candidate. And it's not going to be him because he just keeps putting his foot in his mouth. So this is actually good for somebody like Bernie Sanders, obviously somebody like Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, whoever. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's going to last long to the level, to the level of, truly like getting people to like, so at least getting like for example, like the Obama loyalists, and obviously the people that are like, the donors and stuff. I mean, he's losing a lot of donors as far as like the kind of people that are like giving him money, obviously, and they're like kind of fleeing away from him because they're seeing how bad he did in the debate and stuff, and how his poll numbers aren't looking good. So, those donors are starting to hedge their bets. They're trying to be like, I don't know if I want to put all my money into this guy because I could end up losing money essentially because I'm going to invest into a candidate that is basically a moron and he's going to keep fucking up his chances. So, yeah, I mean, and you guys have to remember, this is something that progressives, again, Kyle Kalinski's mentioned this too, but we've pointed out, others have pointed out how the actual death panels are the for-profit health insurance companies, are the companies that throw people off their their healthcare plans, not Medicare, but their healthcare plans. So anybody that's under some, whatever it is, health insurance company, throw it out there, Pfizer, Aetna, I don't know what else, what other health insurance companies are out there, but all those different kinds. There's all these different companies out there that just, they're the death panels because they throw you off your insurance once they see that they don't want to cover your, health insurance. They don't want to give you health insurance. So they're like, oh, okay, fuck you. So we're just going to throw you off so we don't have to endure your payments for your horrible cancer treatment and, the horrible cancer that you're, suffering through. So we're just going to be like, we're just going to kick you off so we don't have to deal with that. We don't have to take the brunt of that anymore. So that's how they see it. And it's fucked up, man. I don't know how those people, I don't know how they sleep at night knowing that they're fucking over regular people who just want to live longer, And that's why that's why the life expectancy in this country is, compared to a lot of other countries which have better health, they have better health outcomes because they're actually taken care of. Their health is taken care of. Life expectancy in this country is horrible. And everybody else is, living a hell of a lot better than we are while, we're, can't even get decent treatment for something that's a terminal disease. And my own father is going through something like that right now because he has a terminal disease it's a neurological disorder, or neurological disease, not disorder, but neurological disease that's, it could end up unfortunately killing him. And because of it, we're living in this country where there's no decent treatment, can't even get in something good that's good enough or, close enough to something like stem cell. Even stem cell can't do the trick. So it's really a shame. And that's why we need somebody like Bernie Sanders in there, and he can, completely change this, system around and revolutionize it and make it better for all of us. Bernie Sanders appeared on CNN recently. He was discussing the issue of Medicare-for-all, but in this segment, or in this matter here, speaking kind of directly to the whole, like all the attacks and stuff from Joe Biden, and also some comments made regarding or made by Kamala Harris regarding Medicare-for-all, where she basically made a very bad defense of Medicare-for-all and said that she would not raise taxes on the middle class. Bernie Sanders responded to that by saying we have to raise taxes on the middle class, but that it's going to be offset by the fact that you don't have to pay any more premiums, co-pays, and deductibles. So since all those three are going to be taken, are basically not going to exist anymore, the taxes, people are going to be able to afford the taxes. So Bernie explains it much better here. This is about a 6-minute segment or so in an interview with a CNN host. So check out this segment, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
When you talk about these other countries that have universal health care, a lot of those other countries don't necessarily have only Medicare for all, for example. They also offer an insurance option. And one of the arguments I've heard from those in the Democratic Party who are also running to be president is, Why not have both as options? Because Biden, for example, argues throwing out private insurance to transition to a Medicare for all would just simply take too long. And he agrees with you. People need help now.
Well, let me answer you a lot of questions. It doesn't take too long. Think back to 1965, before we had all of the incredible technology that we have today. In 1965, out of nothing, Lyndon Johnson and the Congress created Medicare. And Medicare is now the most popular health insurance program in the country, far, far more popular than private health insurance. If they could do that in 1965, I just cannot accept the argument that over a 4-year period, we cannot do it now. So what we are proposing is first year, lower the eligibility age from 65 to 55. And also in the first year, by the way, expand benefits for seniors to include dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses, which Medicare does not cover right now. That's very important. First year, go down to 55, then 45 next year, then 35 the following year, and then cover everybody. This is clearly something that is doable. If every other country on earth can do it, we can do it as well. And
so when does private insurance just go away?
Because if you want to save money, you have got to get rid of the profiteering of the insurance company.
Right, I hear you there. But if it's a 4-year transition period, is it 4 years that private insurance will still be around before it all goes away? Or how do you get rid of the private insurance?
There will be a transition period. That is right.
Now,
but I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anna.
I'm sorry, too. I think there's just a slight delay. I want to push you on the timeline, though, because Kamala Harris, who also says she believes in Medicare for all, she says it will take longer than you're suggesting. She says it's not realistic. Here's what she told our Kyung Law.
How long will this transition take?
I think the transition is going to have to take, I mean, the bill is 4 years. I think it's going to have to take more than that, to be honest with you. Yeah.
And all of this done without a middle-class tax hike?
Without a middle-class tax hike, yes.
She says under her Medicare for all plan, the middle class won't pay more taxes. I know under your plan they will, right?
Well, let's be clear, okay? Let's be clear. This is going to be the Republican talking point, and let me respond to it. Right now, people are paying taxes for health care. It is called premiums. It is called co-payments. It is out-of-pocket expenses. If you are a family of 4 today, self-employed, you are spending $28,000 a year in premiums and out-of-pocket expenses for health care. Now, how would you define that? So under a public health care system, Medicare for all, of course, taxes would go up. Under our view, they will go up in a progressive way. When we have massive income and wealth inequality in America, it is going to be the wealthy and the top 1% who will be paying significantly more in taxes. But I'm not going to sit here and in a straight face tell you that, yeah, people are going to be paying much less in their premiums and out-of-pocket expenses. They will, in many cases, be paying somewhat more in taxes. But at the end of the day, they're going to be paying less for health care. For example, if right now, just as a hypothetical, Anna, your family was spending $15,000 a year on health care, and I said to you, you're not going to have to pay any of that. No deductibles, no co-payments, no premiums. You're going to pay $7,500 more in taxes. You'd be $7,500 to the good. So that is the debate that we're having. It is going to be publicly funded. It's going to be funded out of the tax base. But we are going to eliminate completely out-of-pocket expenses and premiums and co-payments.
Okay, I'm following. Is Senator Harris then being forthcoming or realistic when she says middle-class taxes won't have to go up to pay for Medicare for all?
We're going to have to look at what a tax plan will look at. And we have given options in our proposal. This is a large program. My guess is that people in the middle class will be paying somewhat more in taxes, but they're going to be paying significantly less overall in health care. But that will depend upon the type of tax plan to fund Medicare for all that we come up with. But let us be clear right now. If you consider premiums, as I do, a tax, the working class of this country is very heavily taxed, and we will lower that burden.
Would you be willing to moderate at all on your healthcare position? Will you support Biden care if Biden wins the nomination?
Will I support Biden care? No, I think our proposal Well, what I have said, you're asking me two questions, really. Number one, will I support, if it is not me, somebody else who becomes the Democratic nominee to defeat the most dangerous president in American history? You bet I will. I will do everything I can to defeat Donald Trump. I hope that I am the candidate, and I am confident others will do the same. Do I believe that what Joe is talking about is a good idea? I don't. At the end of the day, by the way, when we talk about cost, what leading Medicare, healthcare economists have told us, if we leave the current system unchanged, you're going to be talking about extraordinary increases, something like $50 trillion 10 years from now, over a 10-year period. That is too much money. We need a cost-effective system which gets rid of the incredible complexity and administration and bureaucracy that currently exists. So if you want to talk about a cost-effective system that guarantees health care to all people, that expands benefits for seniors, Medicare for all is the way to go.
Beautifully put by Bernie. He nailed it, as usual. And as I said, and, as he explained in that little exchange there with the host, he lays it out perfectly. And he says, listen, if you have certain amount of costs, I think he said the example that he used was, 15,000. Obviously, he's not using any, specific numbers, any, specific costs or anything. But if you're making, you're spending $15,000 on insurance, whatever, insurance and, whatever kind of health issues you have, and you're spending $50,000 on that because of the health insurance companies make you. So and that's all copays, deductibles, premiums, all that stuff, including all the overhead and everything put together. All those costs comes to $15,000. Once that's taken away, the tax cuts that you're going to have to pay, which are not going to be that, the tax hikes that you're going to pay is going to be so minimal because, when it comes down to it, you don't really need to spend that much on healthcare to the point that the health insurance companies make you pay, because the amounts that the health insurance companies make you pay for care is so absurd. It's so bloated. It's just like a bloated military budget. There's so much money that's spent on this government spending, and it's just completely wasteful. So the way, in this, at least in this regard, in this form of government spending, it's much more responsible and it's much more efficient. And it's used in a way where it's a single payer system, and whatever amount that you don't pay in copays, premiums, and deductibles, it gets offset by the taxes that the tax hikes that you have to pay, but at least you get better care. So I can't remember exactly what analogy he used in the $15,000. You're paying $15,000. I think he said then you'll pay $7,500, so you'll pay half that amount, $7,500 instead, because you're not going to pay all that money in deductibles, premiums, and copays. So yeah, you're going to pay a little bit more in taxes, but at least without all those premiums, copays, and deductibles, then you don't have to. All the money doesn't have to go to that, and then it'll go to tax hikes, and then you get better care. It's a perfectly normal, sensible solution. And, we can get into the details a lot more. I mean, obviously, we would like to hear a lot more details as far as specifically how it's laid out. But I mean, if you want to take Bernie's word at, Bernie's word at what he says, which I do, I think, I trust him in what he's saying when he lays it out like that. And he says that's how it's going to be. Obviously, you implement the plan and it happens, and then you got to see how it turns out. So it's not, I don't think it's that cut and dry. I think it's going to take a lot more fine tuning to get it done. But I believe him when he puts it out, he lays it out like that. It makes sense. And anybody, and this was always something that I realized too, because because obviously, when the first Medicare for, the first conversation that came out regarding Medicare for all in 2016, everybody was like, oh my God, we're going to have to pay so much money in taxes, so much this, so much that, taxes have to be, spent to cover this, blah, blah, blah. So, and I always thought to myself, and I'm not an economic expert. I'm not I'm actually pretty bad at economics. I took a couple of classes in school, and I barely passed those classes because it's kind of hard to follow sometimes. It's Those are the kind of things that, you can't really simplify it. It's something you either get or you don't. And I was never really good at math either. So, but I always thought to myself, like arithmetically in my head, I was like, that just, it doesn't make sense how people say we can't afford to pay higher in taxes to cover, for example, in this case, healthcare, whether it's healthcare, whether it's, free college and stuff like that. Like when they claim like, oh, we can't afford to pay for this, I'm like, yeah, but you're paying all this. So in the case of healthcare, you're paying all this money for all these deductibles, copays, and premiums, but those are going to go away under a single payer plan. And the only thing I have to say about Bernie regarding this is I wish he would have come out with this argument sooner, because a lot of people it would have given people a better opportunity to kind of ingest that information and kind of take it in and be like, okay, well that makes sense, so now I don't have to pay as much in all those deductibles, premiums, and copays. So then I'm willing to pay a little bit more and higher in taxes, and I guarantee you that's what all the other countries, all the other industrialized countries like Scandinavia, Europe, Germany, and France and Canada, even UK. I guarantee you that's what all those other countries do, and it works out for them. So why can't it work out for us? The only thing you can say is, well, we have 330 million people out there. So yeah, that's true. But at the same time, we're spending trillions of dollars on wars and all that wasteful bullshit. So under Bernie, if Bernie is president, we have a president, Bernie Sanders, he's going to be able to, I believe, and I think many of us believe, that he will be able to allocate that amount of money, that wasteful spending, to be spent efficiently and the right way, instead of doing it for endless wars that we're not even supposed to be involved in the first place. So, as we talked about in the last segment, Joe Biden was obviously going after Medicare for all, and he chimed in on this, on this kind of, obviously, this conversation, and he, I don't think it was in response to this segment specifically, but he was responding to the fact that, taxes are going to have to go higher to pay for Medicare for all, and he was basically bragging about how his Obamacare Redux plan essentially is better because he's not going to have to raise taxes. So he tweets out, with a link to an article from AP News, which says 2020 Dems grapple with how to pay for Medicare for all. Joe Biden says, here's the deal. My plan to build on Obamacare will expand healthcare coverage and lower costs without raising taxes on the middle class. Proponents of Medicare for all can't say the same. That's not true, because the whole idea behind Medicare for all is that you're going to pay less. And yes, again, you're going to have to pay higher in taxes, but the costs are going to be a hell of a lot lower than they're going to be for Obamacare, which is not even that low. And you don't even, a lot of times you don't even get to keep your doctor and all that shit that Obama said about, oh, you're gonna be able to keep your doctor, and you're not gonna lose your doctor, and you're not gonna lose your provider. No, that's bullshit. Because under single payer, if you ask anybody from any other industrialized country out there, they all say, no, we're allowed to keep our doctor and our providers, and nothing gets lost there. We don't have to pay anything extra. There's no wait lines, there's no rationing and all that shit. If you want to talk about wait lines and rationing, that's what's happening in this country. So the people that whine about that kind of stuff happening in Canada and Europe and France and all Scandinavia, that's bullshit. Because when it happens over there, if anything, those are done for like elective procedures. Those are done for matters that are pertaining to like surgery. So like, for example, if you need a surgery, but it's not like something you need right there and then. So like, let's say it's like a knee surgery, right? Or surgery on some sort of like elbow and an arm or something, right? Okay, it's not a big deal. But if there's a situation where you need surgery, and if you don't get it, your life is, you're going to die, your life is going to be over, then yes, of course they're not going to make you wait. But if you compare that to what happens in this country, you want cancer treatment, you want to get chemotherapy and stuff, they fucking kick you off your healthcare insurance. All those, ridiculous for-profit health insurance companies, they kick you off because they're like, yeah, we don't want to cover you for that. So fuck you, and if you die, then who gives a shit? So don't talk about rationing and wait lines for Canada and the UK, when at least in those countries they only have to wait, and They only have to wait for their health, their healthcare outcomes. Essentially, they have to wait for them if it's an elective procedure. But if it's a life and death situation, they get you right away. They cover you right away, and they do what they need to do to save your life. Which is why in this country, like I said in the last segment, the life expectancy is so fucking low that we die a hell of a lot sooner than we should. While in other countries it's a hell of a lot better, and they treat their fellow human beings as human beings instead of subhumans, basically. So Bernie Sanders' campaign has been taking a lot of issue with the mainstream media and how they cover his campaign and how they cover him and the way they kind of treat him as if he's a candidate that has no chance to win, and he's falling in the polls and stuff like that. So recently they decided to call out the mainstream media, and they decided to say that their coverage of him is unfair, and they're portraying him in a light that's completely inaccurate and not it's not in any basis of fact or anything. It's just based on whatever their anti-Bernie biases basically are. So I wanted to read an article here from The Hill where it discusses that very issue. The title of the article is Sanders' Campaign Vents Frustration with Media Polls. And the article is from, I believe, the 17th. Yeah. So let's check it out here. It says Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign aides are questioning the polls and venting frustration with the news media, arguing that a biased political press is writing him off or blackballing him from coverage of the 2020 Democratic presidential primary. Sanders is in second place or third place in many national and early state polls, but his campaign has struggled to overcome the emerging narrative that his moment has passed. After electrifying the liberal base as the lone serious challenger to Hillary Clinton in 2016, Sanders has at times been overshadowed in his second presidential run by Senators Elizabeth Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts, and Kamala Harris, Democrat of California, who have generated buzz and excitement as they've risen in the polls. Sanders' campaign aides have taken notice, arguing that public opinion surveys don't capture their young, enthusiastic base of supporters or the new voters they say they're bringing into the fold. And as you guys know if you watch my podcast, you've seen many, many times I say, don't always believe the polls. That doesn't mean you should completely, ignore them and act like they don't exist or anything like that. Just don't take everything that they say seriously in those numbers, because that stuff does not represent doesn't represent a lot of the supporters from different campaigns, especially populist campaigns, and especially campaigns that the mainstream media doesn't approve of, because a lot of times they'll push polls or they'll survey essentially polls, or they'll survey people in their polls that are going to benefit it's going to kind of cater to the belief that whatever that narrative that media company or channel is putting out. So, for example, what happened in 2016 with Donald Trump winning, nobody saw that coming. But constantly, from pollsters like Nate Silver and all these other people, Huffington Post, and all these people were doing polls and said 90%, 95, 98% chance that Hillary's going to win, and 95% chance. But okay, maybe it's a 90% chance, and that was like on election day when the number was getting lower and lower and lower, and Hillary Clinton's chances were getting worse and worse, and they just kept ignoring it and just pretending like, her chances are getting less, but she's still going to win, don't worry. So people completely overlooked the possibility of Trump having a chance. And I think they're doing the same thing with Bernie Sanders too. So let's continue on here. In this part, they talk about how, or they basically push the narrative that Bernie Sanders isn't popular. And it says here, every time there is a story about how Bernie can't win, it fans the flame flames of our base, and we get more donations and more volunteers, said one Sanders campaign aide who is not authorized to speak on the record. We will never be the favorites in the media. I get it. But when was the last time one of these pundits visited a field office or talked to a state director? The bottom line is we have 2 million donors who have bought stock in what we're trying to do. That's powerful. If the media doesn't want to tell that story, that's fine. It just means we have to out-hustle these other campaigns. That's a very good mentality right there. I love that. Instead of just, spinning these stories and just pretending like it's, just putting on some bullshit propaganda and platitudes, they're getting into the details of how they're the grassroots campaign, and they have that grassroots motivation and grassroots spirit, and they're going to use that to plow through all the other candidates and prove the mainstream media wrong, and all the polls wrong too. And so here the article profiles basically the Bernie haters who talked about Bernie being a greatest hits candidate, basically, quote unquote. So it says Sanders' critics say it's up to the candidate to reinvent himself in a way that makes him stand out. Some Democrats say he's been a one-note candidate, always pivoting off of the political debate of the day to return to the same anti-corporate message that he's honed over decades. He's almost like a greatest hits act, said one Democratic operative. Others say Sanders has failed to broaden his appeal beyond a core block of progressive voters. How's that possible? He's getting the support of people in the Rust Belt. He's trying to garner support in black communities, South Carolina, Alabama. He's going to places like West Virginia as well, which is much more like Rust Belt-ish. Going to the middle of the country, Iowa, Ohio, and stuff. He's definitely got the support of Michigan, Wisconsin, those, very high union, heavy union type states, which Wisconsin definitely is. Yeah, so this is bullshit. This doesn't make any fucking sense. These what is it, a Democratic operative? It's probably some sort of strategist or something. Those people are totally clueless. As I've said at the beginning, those people don't know shit. They don't know what they're talking about. They just talk out of their ass and give you some stupid explanation that doesn't make any sense. And I guess this is quoting another Democratic strategist. It says, the challenge here is getting news editors to see him as newsworthy when he's not moving in the race, said one Democratic strategist with close ties to the progressive movement. The reality is he's having a hard time expanding. It's completely okay for the media to point this out. The media is reporting on real movement in a dynamic race. This is not 2016 where he was the only other option. I doubt that's an actual progressive strategist. The progressive strategists don't say that kind of stuff. Now, yes, it's true that it's okay to report on, the moving of the polls. Nobody's saying that you shouldn't report on what's happening in polls and stuff like that. But it's the characterizations that the media invents, where they say like, oh my God, Bernie Sanders, like the same shit they're saying here. Bernie Sanders is saying the same thing as he was before, and he's within a bunch of candidates that are sounding just like him, and they're much younger. And oh my God, I can't count how many times I've heard this stupid narrative from these idiot pundits constantly saying this shit about how there's other candidates that are saying the same exact things as Bernie, so somehow that makes them more appealing. Like, where do people get this stuff from? It's just, you're just like, as if, that person is going to say something, everybody is just going to fall all over themselves and be like, oh my God, Cory Booker sounds so wonderful, or Kamala Harris sounds so wonderful because she's younger and now she's sounding like Bernie, so that's perfect. As if we believe that candidate's going to maintain that narrative, they're going to maintain that those talking points and go forward with that agenda. How do we know that they're not going to become centrists one time as soon as the fucking the general election comes by? When the general election comes by, they go right to the center again. They all of a sudden they become moderates after pretending to be fucking liberals and progressives in the primary. That's what every fucking Democrat does. The only person that hasn't done that, didn't do it in 2016. Well, he didn't make it to the general, but Bernie Sanders, when he was running in 2016, he was consistent throughout the entire primary, and he fought for those policies when leading up to the Democratic National Convention. He made sure that those policies were in the platform for the Democratic National Committee, and I mean, it made a huge difference. So don't tell me about all these other candidates that are in this race and somehow because they sound like Bernie that makes them just as appealing. That's bullshit. So continuing on here, it talks about how Bernie directly, he gets called out by the media and about his rhetoric. It says on Sunday's Meet the Press, NBC anchor Chuck Todd confronted Sanders with criticism that his 2020 campaign sounds exactly like his 2016 campaign. Oh my God, how dare he repeat the same things that he was repeating before. Sanders responded that he will change what he's saying when, quote, when the poor get richer and the rich get poorer, when all of our people have health care as a right, and when we are leading the world in the fight against climate change. I mean, that's so true. So what are you supposed to do? Just because he's saying the same things from 2016, all of a sudden that's... we've talked about this before. We talked about this on the last episode when Marcus Melitzis was going after Bernie too for the same stupid shit. What is he supposed to do? He's supposed to alter his opinions because we're in a new campaign now because it's 3 years later or whatever, 4 years later, almost 4 years later. So and they claim that he has to evolve and shit. Like, what is he evolving from? He's the most progressive candidate on the fucking stage in whatever debate he's going to be in. He's going to be the most progressive there. And somehow he's supposed to, quote, evolve. So what is he evolving from? He's already the most progressive candidate. Everybody else is to his right. And they're the ones that are co-opting his message and pretending to be like him, yet somehow he's the one who has to change. No, those other candidates are the ones that have to change. They have to become like him, which they are doing, but somehow the pundits and idiot fucking hosts on MSNBC and CNN and people that write these articles, they don't see that as opportunistic. So when they change their narrative, all of a sudden that's a good thing, not realizing the fact that they're going to switch right back to being centrist when the general election happens, like I said before. So the Bernie campaign here, it talks about how that they're airing their grievances on exactly what's going on. This one is talking about Ari Robinhoft, who is the chief of staff for Bernie Sanders. It quotes him as saying, there's an institutional bias in the media for something new, and the press is no longer interested in covering the proposals Sanders brought to the forefront in the 2016 campaign that have since become mainstream in the Democratic Party. Robinhoft highlighted the insidious instances in which the media wrote up polls that showed Sanders firmly in second place, but the headlines and the leads of the stories focused instead on Harris and Warren rising into third or fourth place. Yeah, I remember that. I saw a couple of articles, I think it was from Politico or something, where they're talking about, Warren and Harris have risen and Biden is still in the lead. So Biden and Harris and Warren are in third and fourth place, and Biden is still in the lead. But then they don't even mention the person that's in second place. Who is that? It's Bernie Sanders. Continuing on here, it says, and he suggested that the top levels of the political press don't understand Sanders' appeal because they're disconnected from ordinary Americans. Quoting Robinhoft again here, it says, the elite media, the media that's at the top, the cable nets, the lead editors, the reporters, they tend to live in Washington, D.C. or New York, Robinhoft said. They tend to be upper middle class or wealthy. They work for companies worth billions of dollars, so on TV, you have millionaires paid by billionaires to present information. That's very true. So they're totally disconnected and out of touch, basically. This is kind of a breakdown of how, like I said before, the mainstream media is underestimating Bernie, just like they did Trump in 2016. It says Sanders' allies argue that in 2016, pollsters routinely underestimated his base of support, referring to Bernie, and failed to account for young or new voters who supported him. They say they have an unparalleled network of volunteers and point to the fact that they've raised more money than any other candidate in the first 2 quarters of the year from about 2 million individual small dollar donors. In Iowa, for instance, where Sanders outperformed expectations in 2016, his campaign has carefully built up a massive turnout operation aimed at turning non-voters into highly motivated caucus goers. And this next part's quoting Ro Khanna, who is the co-chair of Bernie's campaign, and he's talking about the trending of the different trends of the polls. It says, I think the polling probably underestimates his support because last caucus, what happened is he exceeded the polls. Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, a co-chair of Sanders' campaign, said there were about 10,000 to 12,000 people who showed up the day of the caucus who registered as Democrats to vote. Khanna said that Sanders' support is strongest in Iowa, the first in the nation caucus state, and California, which will vote on Super Tuesday. Both states will be critical in determining the Democratic nominee. I think his support in Iowa is very strong, very, very strong. Khanna said he's got one of the best ground teams. I was all over the state, and he's got numerous volunteers showing up to help canvass and call this early. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that the media is underestimating for sure. His ground game, his grassroots ground game. And then here, there's another pollster claiming, as the mainstream media typically does, that Bernie supporters might prefer other candidates in 2020 compared to 2016. It says, but Monmouth University pollster Patrick Murray said he has come across a significant chunk of 2016 Sanders supporters who are giving the other candidates a serious look. Murray agreed that pollsters don't know what the 2020 electorate will look like and that it's possible new voters will propel Sanders to victory. But he said surveys showing Harris and Warren on the rise and cutting into Sanders' support are an accurate reflection of the state of the race, at least at this early stage when support for all the candidates is soft. We don't know who will show up. The polls are not clear on what the electorate will look like, Murray said, but the overall trend of where the different candidates are moving is real. There are Sanders voters from 2016 who are looking seriously at other candidates. And that's why his support isn't where it was last time. Some might not go back to him because of the plethora of candidates to choose from. So I already mentioned this before. They're using that same narrative about how just because there's more candidates to choose from, all of a sudden that means that they're going to go to all those other candidates, even though those candidates don't have the same agenda as Bernie Sanders. Just because they sound like Bernie Sanders doesn't mean they're going to go all of a sudden, go in favor of the candidate that is younger or, is a person of color or young, whatever, gay, like Pete Buttigieg is. Yeah, that narrative doesn't exist. So these people are like Ro Khanna said, Robin Hoft said, these people are, they're totally out of touch. They don't know anything about Bernie voters. They don't know how we think. They don't know anything about progressives and what our agenda truly stands for. Now they know what we believe in, but they don't know about how we won't just settle for any other, any candidate that's out there. We want the candidate that's going to be an actual progressive and the one that we know is going to be Donald Trump. So Joe Biden is not going to be Donald Trump. Kamala Harris is not going to be Donald Trump. Elizabeth Warren is not going to be Donald Trump. Now, obviously, their policies are better, but not really so much with Biden, but I mean, like, let's say Elizabeth Warren, yeah, her policies are much, much better than what Donald Trump has what Donald Trump is offering. But that doesn't mean that she's going to win, because a lot of people are going to look at Donald Trump and they're going to see that, the way he talks and the way he puts out his rhetoric and, spews his propaganda, people are going to fall for it a hell of a lot more than somebody like Elizabeth Warren, who I believe doesn't connect with the majority of regular voters out there. And I think honestly they would probably look at Elizabeth Warren as a little bit of an elitist, and people don't like voting for elitist candidates. They don't like that. And that was very evident for example, in 2004 when John Kerry ran against George W. Bush. And everybody saw George W. Bush as like that typical everyday man, everyman, and even though he wasn't, but they saw him as like that typical everyman who, you can sit down and have a beer with, you can hang out with, and you can go, I don't know, pick up some brush in his fucking cabin or something and go fishing and, go horseback riding and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, compared to John Kerry, who speaks French and he's fucking, I don't know, skiing in the Alps and shit like that. It's like, that's not stuff that people relate to. And that's unfortunately, like with somebody like, for example, Elizabeth Warren, she is a former Harvard law professor. Now, to be fair, Barack Obama, he obviously became president, and he was a he was a law professor, and he was a constitutional lawyer and all that stuff. But he had much more of an inspiring message. And he had a message that connected to people that were tired of George W. Bush. People aren't tired of Donald Trump. People are angry at Donald Trump. But then on the other hand, people are also very excited for Donald Trump. So his supporters are very excited for Donald Trump. The more he gets attacked, the more they back him. The more, the more scandals there are out there, the more people that hate him. So it's a battle of emotions. That's how it is with Donald Trump and his supporters. And if you want to get somebody in there who is not going to be able to connect on that same emotional level, but also obviously pushing the policies, then you're not going to get by him. And I believe that somebody like Bernie Sanders, regardless of whatever emotional support that he has from his supporters, which I don't think is much, but let's just say if he has some, that's good. But majority of his support comes from the fact that he has people backing him for his policies, and it doesn't matter what kind of emotional support he has. So he can have people loving him and thinking he's a rock star, but at the end of the day, it's important to know that people trust him to be who he is and to be a real person and to relate to regular people. Donald Trump, people may think he relates to regular people based on the way he doesn't act presidential, and he's just kind of like shooting from the hip and sounding very sounding like he's just talking on the kind of on the go, just saying whatever is on his mind. But at the end of the day, they know that he doesn't really give a shit about anybody but himself, and he loves to get attention through his tweeting and through his, fucking gaslighting of progressives and talking about Medicare for none or whatever the hell he was talking about, as covered in the last segment. So just putting out fucking bullshit propaganda, waging wars. He's not ending the wars that he claimed he wanted to end. So Trump he's a fucking charlatan, as everybody knows, and majority of people don't see that in Bernie Sanders. They see that in Elizabeth Warren. Well, I think they probably see it less in Elizabeth Warren than any other non-Bernie candidate. But like somebody like Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Pete Buttigieg, these people are not no regular person is inspired by these people. The only thing they like about them is that they're young. That's it. Joe Biden is just a fucking dinosaur because not only is he old, but his ideas are old. And whereas Bernie Sanders' ideas are new, but he's old. But it doesn't matter because people still see Bernie as this, young grandpa, essentially, right? He's a grandpa, but he's still a young grandpa because he doesn't have that same stupid agenda where he's pushing ideas that people don't want. He's pushing the idea, he's pushing the agenda that people are actually advocating for. And that's why we like him. And that's why we're going to vote for him. So, as if we thought the Russiagate conspiracy theories are gone, they always manage to rear their ugly heads again. And that's exactly what happened recently when Kamala Harris, she talked about how Russian bots are attacking her and they're, coming out and spearing her in some regard, I guess. And she's trying to, Again, these fucking establishment candidates are trying to create this absurd narrative so that they can portray themselves as the victims of Russian bots so that they can, essentially delegitimize legitimate attacks against them. But that was covered here. So that whole thing was covered on a couple of articles here that I'm going to read for you guys. The first one here is from CNN. And the title says, Kamala Harris says Russian bots are targeting her, but they also respond, but the title also said it's more complicated than that. So, Let's read the first part of the article here. It says, Senator Kamala Harris has claimed her presidential campaign is being targeted on social media by Russian bots. But while U.S. intelligence officials say Russian disinformation campaigns targeting Americans continue, verified evidence of attacks on specific candidates has yet to publicly emerge. Harris's claims come as Russian bots, quote, Russian bots, have become a catch-all description for some of any disinformation spread online. Democrats could even potentially view the perception that they have been targeted by Russian trolls as politically advantageous, another way to contrast themselves to President Donald Trump, who has publicly sowed doubt about the veracity and implications of Russian cyber meddling, despite warnings from intelligence officials. A Twitter spokesperson told CNN that the company had no evidence that Harris was the target of state-backed bots. Facebook would not say if it had found any Russian activity relating to Harris or other Democratic candidates. If there was, they would have said it. So I guarantee you Facebook didn't find anything either. So the next part here profiles how apparently some of the attacks on Harris was about her ethnicity and her heritage. And apparently that made her think that that was Russian bots. But anyway, so it says Harris faced a flood of attacks that sought to undermine her racial identity during last month's presidential debate after she recounted being bused to school as a child. CNN documented how the attacks had been festering online for months before being elevated to the mainstream on debate night, when Donald Trump Jr. shared a tweet sent by one user with the assertion Kamala Harris is not, and then the not has two asterisks on it, an American black. Couldn't you say just black American? And then they say she is half Indian and half Jamaican. But that's true though, so I mean, apparently being, so Jamaicans are technically black, apparently. But yes, she is half Indian and half Jamaican, so I don't know what's so wrong about that. I've even said that, so I don't know, maybe I'm one of the bots that they're referring to. I don't think I got retweeted by Donald Trump Jr., but okay. It says that user subsequently attended President Trump's social media summit, so that definitely wasn't me, that took place at the White House last week. Although CNN found that some of the accounts that attacked Harris during the debate were later suspended, a Twitter spokesperson said that the company had not detected any automatic bot activity. Automatic bots allow one user to send tweets across multiple accounts at once, which can have the effect of making it appear an issue or talking point is gaining traction. And the last part of the article, this specific CNN article says, it quotes an expert, a social media expert, who says people are they're better off to avoid these accusations or making these accusations because there's no evidence of it, and it's at this point basically it's pretty much baseless. So it says Benjamin T. Decker, the founder of Memetica, a digital investigations consultancy, has been tracking the spread of memes attacking Harris's racial identity. He urged caution on blaming Russia. Quoting him, it says, in many ways, claims that the Russian bots did it deflect from the myriad of socio-political problems that we face as Americans because the majority of political disinformation is being created by and for American audiences, he said. That's totally true. This guy's right. I don't even know who this dude is. He's completely right. I'm surprised CNN even quoted this guy. And I'm surprised the article was actually pretty... It was pretty, I would say, objective compared to most shitty CNN articles. But he's absolutely right, though. I mean, the problems that are happening in this country are happening regardless of whether Russian bots are involved or not. And it's my contention that Russian bots are not involved because there's no evidence of it. And these people aren't finding evidence of it. So it's obviously bullshit. And I still think that all the bullshit about Russian bots in 2016 was still bullshit. And I still think it's bullshit right now, too. But, of course, Kamala Harris being who she is, she's going to sound even more absurd here, and she's going to make even more ridiculous claims. And by the way, these are comments, the comment that I just read to you guys about from the CNN article, and the one I'm just about to read, happened on the show The Breakfast Club, which is hosted by Charlamagne the God and a couple of other people, too. I think it's based in New York, I believe. So this is an article from SFGate. SFK.com, which is based in San Francisco. It says Kamala Harris Kaepernick backlash, referring to Colin Kaepernick, was not a thing until Russian bots started taking it on. So now she's claiming that the Colin Kaepernick controversy, when people started attacking Colin Kaepernick for kneeling for the national anthem, she's claiming that that's Russian bots making that a bigger issue and then attacking him. But anyway, so it says Senator Kamala Harris, Democrat of California, said the controversy surrounding the national anthem protests of former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick was, quote, not a thing, until Russian trolls started fanning the flames on social media. It says during a Friday interview with the radio show The Breakfast Club, Harris discussed Russian interference in the 2016 election and said the easiest way for Russian online trolls to sow discord in American politics is to stoke racial animosity. They test out a couple of things to see what can get the American public going at each other, pointing fingers at each other. Harris said, guess what gains the most heat? Race. Harris specifically cited the explosive national debate that ignited in August 2016 when Kaepernick first chose not to stand during the national anthem. Quoting her again, it says, remember the heat that ended up around the bend the knee and Colin Kaepernick? Harris asked. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking that on. Kaepernick's protests received attention from the national media immediately after a photo of him sitting on the bench while the anthem played before a preseason game went viral on social media. Listen, this is Kamala Harris's attempt to pretend like she's a victim and pretend like she is, so like just in case she doesn't win the primary, let alone beats Donald Trump if she makes it the general election, she wants to put that idea out there. Okay, Russian bots. So like scare everybody and get everybody around the idea of Russian bots as if that fixes anything. So like, okay, so Russian bots supposedly talked about Colin Kaepernick, Russian trolls out there put out the message of Colin Kaepernick kneeling. I assume she means that they're attacking him. But then, so what are you saying? So there's like not regular idiots out there that don't like Colin Kaepernick kneeling? It's like that was something that was happening. But that's the thing. Like the right wingers out there who attack Colin Kaepernick and whine about bending or whatever, kneeling during a national anthem. Trust me, I know they're idiots. They're not smart people. But their grievances are they're real. These are people that are idiots, and they're like, and a lot of them are like, they're in the military and stuff, and they like to talk about how like Colin Kaepernick is attacking them. He's attacking the military, and he's not a real American, and he's unpatriotic, shit like that. And these are people they honestly believe these things. I don't think the so-called Russian trolls are making any more of a difference in this debate than regular crazy right-wingers would do. And even if that were the case, it's not like, I'm saying, like, it's not like all of a sudden people wouldn't be caring about that, And it's stupid how she makes this connection. Obviously, as is the case, as usual, with the likes of somebody like Kamala Harris, she's obviously got her advisors telling her to put this shit out there so that you can... First of all, she's trying to pretend like Colin, like she's on the side of Colin Kaepernick, cares about what he's doing and stuff. Well, maybe she does. But, she obviously doesn't know anything about Colin Kaepernick other than the fact that he was kneeling during a national anthem, because if she knew what Colin Kaepernick had, what his views were, she would know, more people would know that Colin Kaepernick actually didn't believe in voting in the 2016 election because he thought that the option of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump was totally ridiculous and illegitimate, and it was not a real election where people were actually voting based on the issues that were affecting them. It was just voting for either the the lesser evil or the horrible evil. So it's either one evil or another. And, you know, I can espouse to that view too. I mean, I totally believe that. I didn't believe like I was voting for any kind of legitimate candidate if I was going to go and vote for Hillary Clinton. No way. I decided to go and vote for Jill Stein. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Colin Kaepernick did that as well. And, you know, I would say because of his, you know, bending the knee or, you know, whatever, not, or, you know, kneeling during the national anthem or not even standing for the national anthem, he was a very good representative. He was one of the main, I would say, representatives of the Black Lives Matter movement. And he put that movement, I would say he was largely responsible for putting that movement on the map because of the fact that he, first of all, he is a black man. I think he's half black, half white, I believe. But he is a black man, and he believes in the issue of, you know, black men getting, you know, shot and killed by trigger-happy cops, corrupt cops, and, you know, cops that just want to mistreat people of color, whether they're black, Mexican, whatever it is, woman, man, whatever. And he stood up for that cause, and he knew that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump obviously weren't going to do anything to fix those issues. So he told people, he didn't tell people not to vote, but he said, I'm not going to vote for anybody. Now, maybe I wouldn't be surprised if he voted for Jill Stein. Maybe he didn't, though. But even if he didn't, or even if he did, that would have been good if he voted for Jill Stein, because at least he would be saying, okay, I'm not going to vote for one of the two corrupt, you know, shitty fucking corporatist parties. And, you know, I'm sure if Bernie Sanders was running, he would have voted for Bernie Sanders. No doubt about it, because Bernie Sanders had a much better agenda for this country, as we've talked about, and Hillary Clinton didn't have shit to offer. And Colin Kaepernick knew this. And the people that want to grift off of Colin Kaepernick's movement, you know, and I'm sure Harris has done that. I'm pretty sure Hillary Clinton did that. You know, the people that want to do that, they're not, you know, real believers of the Black Lives Matter movement. And Hillary Clinton definitely didn't give a shit about Black Lives Matter. She pretended to. She never really did anything to help make that movement, you know, put it into the mainstream. To be fair, I do believe that Bernie Sanders could have done a lot more to address the Black Lives Matter movement and kind of stand up for them more. But Hillary Clinton was horrible on it, and she was just like, she just constantly pretended to like give a shit, and then she just didn't do anything regarding that issue. And you know, if Colin Kaepernick, being one of the faces of the Black Lives Matter movement, not the only face, but one of the faces, he would have, if he really felt that Hillary Clinton was truly going to do something regarding black relations in this country with whites, and let alone with cops and everything, if he believed that she was, you know, sincere in her beliefs, he would have supported her, and he would have voted for her, or he would have at least said that, you know, she's the better option. And he obviously didn't believe that. And he made it clear that the people that are running are not the ones that we need. And I think he was somebody that he used the fact that he had a platform as a football player who makes millions of dollars, and he had the ability to put his ideas out there about how, you know, black men are getting gunned down by crooked, you know, trigger-happy police, and, you know, also the fact that, you know, black Americans are not, they're not even getting paid decent wages, they're not being treated fairly, you know, at all, let alone being shot by cops or killed by cops, and he wanted to make that known, and Kaepernick will always be appreciated for that. So don't fall for any of the things that Kamala Harris says about how the people that opposed Colin Kaepernick was Russian bots. These were right wingers that hate Colin Kaepernick, period. So what she's doing is she's delegitimizing the real threat of the right wing movement, which is out there to smear people on the other side who are actually fighting for real causes. At least the ones that, you know, the ones that we would hope are fighting for real causes. So at least, you know, the actual progressive people out there. But what she's actually doing is she's delegitimizing the right wingers who have legitimate beliefs, or not legitimate, but they have actual beliefs that they believe in, no matter how crazy it is, but it's actual beliefs that they believe in. And it's not just Russian bots. These are people that truly hate Colin Kaepernick. They love the flag and they love the military, and they think, kneeling during the anthem is some sort of, unholy action. So don't try and, act like they don't exist and just Russian bots are the ones that are creating this narrative about how you should stand up for the national anthem. We have to, once we know who the enemy is, in this case, the enemy being the right wing, pushing out all this bullshit, then we'll know to fight them instead of fighting some unknown, non-existent Russian bot. That's how we're going to fight those people. That's never going to happen. So we have to fight the actual people that are, putting out misinformation out there, and that's the right wingers. Kamala Harris, her husband is apparently helping her kind of campaign, doing fundraisers and stuff. And she recently spoke out about how people that take money from the law firm that represents Jeffrey Epstein. So Jeffrey Epstein is he's a child molester and a sexual harasser that recently got locked up for being caught essentially doing child trafficking, sexual child trafficking, and he recently just got thrown into jail, got hit with like tons of charges and stuff. So this was obviously a big story. This was something that was actually being, if I remember correctly, it was being investigated for a while, and finally they came to the point of filing the charges, and then charging him, filing the charges, and then he was found guilty, and so he's been thrown in jail. So definitely justice was served in that regard. But Kamala Harris came out and said, like I said, people that take money from the law firms that represent Jeffrey Epstein, this child molester, child trafficker guy, that you're doing the wrong thing and you shouldn't do that. So you shouldn't be taking money from any law firm that represents this guy. So the title of this article is from AP. It says, Harris blasts and takes money from Epstein's law firm. So again, her husband did a fundraiser with partners from the firm representing Jeffrey Epstein. So let's check it out here. It says, Kamala Harris bemoaned the influence of the powerful and connected elite last Tuesday when she called on top Justice Department officials to recuse themselves from any matter related to Jeffrey Epstein. She said their former law firms work on behalf of the financier accused of sexual abuse calls into question the integrity of our legal system. Yet the same day, Harris's husband headlined a Chicago fundraiser for her presidential campaign that was hosted by 6 partners of that firm, Kirkland and Ellis, according to an invitation obtained by the Associated Press. Harris, a California senator and Democratic presidential candidate, was one of several White House hopefuls to blast the handling of Epstein's case in Florida a decade ago, when his lawyers negotiated a deal with federal prosecutors that allowed him to avoid the possibility of years in prison. But her decision to move ahead with the fundraiser hosted by Kirkland and Ellis partners while criticizing the firm underscores the tension that can arise when a politician's rhetoric collides with his or her need to raise money to sustain a presidential campaign. If any connection with Kirkland and Ellis is a stain on senior department officials, why isn't a connection with the law firm for the receipt of campaign contributions a stain on her own campaign? Said Paul S. Ryan, an attorney for the good government group Common Cause. And then the next part here quotes an official from the Kamala Harris campaign defending this fundraiser. It says, Ian Sams, a Harris spokesman, said there wasn't a problem with accepting the campaign contributions because the firm is big and the partners who hosted the fundraiser didn't work on Epstein's plea agreement. The people involved in that case have not supported her campaign and she wouldn't want that support anyway. Anyway, Sams said. So that's bullshit because the way Kamala Harris put it is she said that any campaign or any politician, anybody that's taking money from the law firm that represented Jeffrey Epstein, it doesn't matter who the partners are, because partners, there's many partners in a law firm. So she could have easily said that. She could have said, well, don't take money from that specific partner because, they're representing Jeffrey Epstein. That would have made sense. She didn't say that, though. She said you shouldn't be taking money from any of the law firms that represented Jeffrey Epstein. But now her spokesman comes out and then rationalizes the narrative and says, oh, well, she didn't take money from those specific partners. Okay, well, those partners are part of that law firm. So it doesn't matter whether whether she took money from, Bob from that fundraiser compared to Jim from that fundraiser. They're part of from that not fundraiser, from that law firm which held the fundraiser. So whether it was from this law, whether it's from this person or that person, if they're part of the same law firm, then it's still unethical. So, and she knew that, which is why she pointed it out. But then her dumbass spokesperson comes out and tries to, rewrite history and pretend like she didn't say that. And then I think this is it's quoting a statement from Harris. It says, in our democracy, no one, no matter how powerful or connected, is above the law. Yet Epstein's deal, secured by his lawyers at Kirkland & Ellis, calls into question the integrity of our legal system and undermines the public's confidence that justice will be served, Harris said in a statement released hours after the Chicago fundraiser. Ironic. So, but look, that's obviously ridiculous because she's making the statement after the fundraiser happened. But also notice how she says, in our democracy. You do realize that democracy doesn't, if our campaign finance system was an actual democracy, it wouldn't involve taking money from anybody. It would be a public finance system. So don't tell me about how you believe in democracy. This isn't a form of democracy. You're taking, your husband, whoever, you're taking money from people and from, making money from fundraisers and getting money from donors, and you have super PACs and stuff, and you're talking about democracy. Get the fuck out of here, man. You don't give a shit about democracy. If you gave a damn about democracy, you would be calling out the corrupt political system and campaign system and all that stuff. You would be calling that out instead of acting like it's a democracy and you care about it. And then, on top of the fact that you're allowing your husband to do a fundraiser with, a firm that took money from them, but then your own fucking spokesperson acts like it just depends on which partner you took it from. And then here it says, before her election to the Senate, Harris was the Attorney General of California and was elected to 2 terms as San Francisco's district attorney. Her husband, Doug Emhoff, is also a high-powered attorney who works in corporate law. So it is perhaps little surprise that law firms have been one of the top industries that have donated to her presidential bid, with Kirkland & Ellis being no exception. Her campaign declined to say how much was raised at last week's event. Yeah, that's not a surprise. And the sum won't have to be reported to the Federal Election Commission until October. Records show that a handful of employees and partners of the firm donated about $6,000, to Harris during the first quarter of the year. A drop when compared to the $12 million she raised during that time. Quoting her spokesperson again, it says, it's an international law firm with thousands of employees, many of whom probably support Kamala Harris because she's a tough prosecutor who actually knows how to put away predators, unlike the Trump lackeys who protect them. Okay, well, you got no argument from me there. Obviously, Trump and his people are protecting Epstein. Epstein was apparently very good friends with Bill Clinton as well, so that's kind of, yeah. I mean, this Epstein guy is obviously friends with all the shadiest political characters out there. But yeah, this again, the rationalization here, where this spokesperson is acting like Kamala Harris taking money from only specific people that work for that firm is bullshit. That's complete bullshit. It if Kamala Harris herself is saying that you can't take money from that firm, then you shouldn't take it from the firm. It doesn't matter who the partners are. And this just shows that Kamala and her fucking husband, apparently too, are totally unethical, and they're totally unaware of the fact that, hypocrisy is a thing, and they just want to make as much money for her campaign as possible, fundraise for her campaign as much as possible, take donor money from all the richest fucking, corporatist, people out there, whether they're hedge fund managers, whether they're, CEOs of big companies, multinational corporations, organizations, whatever they are, big banks, all that stuff. They don't give a shit. Law firms, apparently in this case. It's very convenient that her and her husband are both lawyers, and it's like, oh yeah. It's very little surprise that they would be getting money from law firms. Yeah, no shit. But that doesn't mean that doesn't excuse anything. It just means, if anything, she's getting money from a bunch of like rich assholes that, want to give her money so that she can, she can fucking give them more tax cuts. I don't know. So Kamala Harris is not an ethical person. She clearly does not care about, being a hypocrite. She'll do it because she knows that it's going to give her, give her more money, put more money in her campaign coffers. And at the end of the day, even if it involves taking money from the firm that represented a child molester, a sexual predator, that's okay. And remember, Kamala Harris had an aide who resigned after a $400,000 sexual harassment lawsuit was settled. And this was a guy that was her senior aide, and he was working for her for years, and she had him on her staff and giving her political advice, and he just happened to resign recently. He resigned actually at the end of near the end of 2018, December 2018, and he resigned, and he made sure to leave her campaign because he knew it was obviously going to be a detriment to her. But at the end of the day, when Kamala Harris pretends like she cares so much about, sexual harassment and like it's such a big deal, why is she why does she have a guy that's working for her that's involved in that's committing sexual harassment, and then is only forced to resign when, after he settles a $400,000 lawsuit. Now, Harris's campaign says, oh, we never knew about him and we never knew about this and we just found out. That's bullshit. There's no way you don't know about your own senior top aide. You don't know about him being involved in a sexual harassment lawsuit. They wanted to see how the sexual harassment lawsuit, panned out, see if he would be, if he would settle, maybe he would be found innocent, maybe he would be found guilty. But they wanted to wait until the result came in and then they would make a decision. So it's very convenient that all of a sudden Kamala Harris pretends like she's holier than thou and she cares about Jeffrey Epstein so much when she didn't even care about her own fucking aide, who, conveniently was was doing the exact same things not the exact same things, but he was doing, pretty bad, obviously bad stuff. He was sexually harassing, women when he shouldn't have been doing it. So, and he got caught for it and then he settled. And somehow you don't see that as an issue? Oh, but you didn't know about it, right? Yeah, get the fuck out of here. Nobody believes that shit. So Kamala Harris is a hypocrite, and she's an opportunist, and she needs to get called out for this shit. This kind of stuff does not get called out. She doesn't get called out for any of these things. About this aide of hers that resigned, about, this article, it got written about her, but this is not going to be brought up in any kind of debate. I guarantee it's not going to be brought up in any kind of, conversation, town hall, nothing like that, because people are just going to say, oh, it's a smear job. It's a smear job. Yeah, that's bullshit. You can call anybody else out for stuff like this, and people are okay with it. But if you call out somebody like Kamala Harris, everybody gets outraged. Recently, Elizabeth Warren, she actually paid a big donor to bankroll the DNC voter database that she purchased, and so she got money from a big donor to basically cover her for this expense, despite the fact that she has refused to take part in any kind of fundraising, So like for apparently party fundraisers or just regular fundraiser for her campaign. Apparently she still does the party fundraiser. I think that's mentioned in this article here. But apparently she's refused to do fundraisers for her own campaign, and but that's not something that's being shown in this case here. So she's apparently gone back on that promise here. So let's check out this article here. It's from BuzzFeed News. It says Elizabeth Warren's campaign turned to a big donor to pay for the DNC voter database despite her fundraising pledge. A campaign aide said Warren didn't solicit the money herself and that there was no violation of her promise to abstain from pay for access fundraising. So this article is written by Ruby Kramer, BuzzFeed News reporter. It was from July 15th. So let's check out the body of the article here. Okay, let's see. Elizabeth Warren relied on a multi-million-dollar Democratic donor to cover the cost of an expensive voter database, a move that risks putting her campaign at odds with the spirit, if not the letter, of the pledge she made to abstain from, quote, big money, end quote, fundraising. In February, 2 months into her presidential campaign, Warren set herself apart from the Democratic field by swearing off the kind of pay-for-play fundraising that typically gives wealthy donors outsized access and influence. Front-row seats at closed-door fundraisers, one-on-one time with candidates, and private phone calls, known on campaigns as hours-long blocks of quote-unquote call time for soliciting big checks. Warren officials said she did not violate that pledge when her campaign turned to one of California's top Democratic donors, a wealthy Silicon Valley physician named Carla Jurvetson, to help pay for access to a crucial voter database earlier this spring. The next part says the so-called National Voter File, a pool of data about millions of people that presidential campaigns use as a foundation for their own private data as they identify and track support over time, is managed by the Democratic National Committee, DNC, and costs campaign a total of $175,000 according to the DNC's voter file contract. The DNC term sheet outlines 2 ways campaigns may pay for the voter file: by transferring funds directly to the DNC or raising that money to the DNC through donors. Jurvetson, who contributed about $7 million to Democratic causes, I'm not sure what that means, but Democratic causes, I guess, could be any number of things. It says during the 2018 election, gave a total of $100,000 to the DNC in April 2019 Federal Election Commission filings show. The donations, according to 2 Democratic operatives with knowledge of the agreement, helped Warren pay for the voter file. In a statement, a Warren campaign official said that the campaign herself did not make any calls to Jurvetson in order to facilitate the contribution, nor did the campaign solicit the money at a fundraising event. The official said Warren has remained consistent with the standard she set earlier this year in her pledge, not trading access for money. It says Warren is one of only 2 candidates to make small dollar fundraising a key pillar of her campaign. She mentions the pledge frequently at events on the trail and in fundraising emails. Online, she sells t-shirts that read, quote, "The best president money can't buy," end quote. The other candidate, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, has not yet purchased access to the DNC voter file, according to a senior advisor. If the campaign does buy the $170,000 product, the advisor said they plan to do so by writing a check directly to the DNC. And it's the last part here. It says apparently there's a lot of perks that go with getting that database. It says, in addition to paying $175,000, campaigns seeking access to the voter file must also agree to appear once every 3 months at DNC fundraisers, send quarterly fundraising emails on behalf of the DNC, and record promotional videos for DNC use. As part of the agreement Warren signed with the DNC to access the voter file, she is slated to appear at a major party fundraiser in San Francisco next month. At the fundraiser, according to a copy of the invitation, donors will be able to pay $10,000 to attend a private cocktail and dinner reception. A $50,000 ticket promises premium seating and photo opportunity. In her fundraising pledge, Warren states that she will continue to raise money for the Democratic Party. How convenient. Her campaign officials have also said the pledge only applies to the primary and would shift should she advance to a general election against Donald Trump. So that's something that, we talked about on the last podcast, actually, where she had a conversation with Cenk Uygur a few months back. And she said, when it comes to the general election, we're not going to, what was the term? Unilaterally disarm. She does not believe in unilateral disarmament when it comes to campaign finance as far as fundraisers and corporate donors and shit. But that's for the general. For the primary, she's against it, and oh my God, she's so principled. But when it comes around to being in the general, we have to do everything to be Donald Trump, even if that means breaking my fundraising pledge. So this fundraising pledge, it has strings attached. Not strings attached, but it has its caveats to it, essentially. But it also does have strings attached because you're forced to do all these extra little events and stuff, and you have to suck up to the DNC and do, quarterly fundraisers? No, send quarterly fundraising emails on behalf of the DNC, and then you have to appear once at DNC fundraisers. It's like, Jesus Christ, is the money that fucking good? Like, do you really love the money that much? Because, let's be real. If she's doing this, she knows that if she doesn't take... So let's say if she doesn't take this voter database, let's just say, compared to not having the voter database, which is probably bad because then you can't access the typical kind of Democratic voters are out there that you're supposed to appeal to. Apparently you can't do that in a grassroots way. You need to have a database. But anyway, if she weren't to do this, then, she'd obviously be left out in the cold, and she would have to run everything by herself instead of getting help from the Democratic Party. And apparently if she's not going to do all this stuff, the Democrats might just, tell her to fuck off during the general election and tell her, sorry, we can't help you because you didn't do the things that you were asked, even though you took the database, the voter database, and so you better do all these things that we ask of you, or else we're not going to help you during the general election as much as, we do for other candidates, for example. So she knows she knows how her bread is buttered, and Elizabeth Warren she's walking a fine line to make sure that she's not doing anything unethical, apparently, but in reality she is breaking the pledges that she claims to not, that she claims to be so serious about. But in reality, she's not really sticking to any kind of pledge. That's just what she says. Because if you were truly sticking to that pledge, you would have stuck to it for the general election too. And she's not, because she knows that she needs to do what she can do, to make sure that, she, has the support of the Democrats and the establishment so that she can beat Trump in 2020 if she makes it to the general election, So I'm not the kind of person who gives her credit for, you have this pledge for the primary and you're not taking corporate donors during the primary, but you're, since you're, only doing it for the general election because you have to beat Trump so badly that, you're totally principled and, I'll give you a break on that. No, I'm not the kind of person that gives people like this a break. They do not deserve a break for doing some things that they honestly shouldn't be doing. So it's crazy to think like she should deserve some sort of praise. She should earn some sort of praise for this, because at the end of the day, it matters that you are sticking to a specific standard of ethical decision-making and ethical actions. And in my opinion, she's not doing that. She's being an opportunist, and she's doing things to make sure she can get all the advantage she can get while still walking that fine line of being a so-called progressive and and also obviously being a capitalist to the bones, or whatever she said. So, yeah, she's not principled. She's not a principled person. I don't see Elizabeth Warren as somebody that is going out there and doing things that, that she's sticking to her. She's sticking to her guns and making sure she's going to, stand up for the regular people out there. Now, maybe her policies are sticking up for regular people, but ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're taking money from corporate donors and you're doing the favors of those donors out there that are giving you money in the general election, you're going to have to pay them back at some point. And just because you don't do it for the primary, but you do it for the general because you're facing Trump, that doesn't mean you should, that doesn't mean you deserve some sort of prize, because that's just not how it works. At the end of the day, you have to be consistent. You have to be consistent like somebody like Bernie Sanders is. Bernie Sanders is consistent in not taking corporate money no matter when, whether it's a general election or whether it's a primary, it doesn't matter to him. But apparently Elizabeth Warren feels like she needs to do this because she's that desperate to beat Trump. Apparently she doesn't care about grassroots campaigning and grassroots, on the ground, boots on the ground work. Bernie Sanders doesn't need this database because he has his database. His database is the people that him and his volunteers connect with when he goes to different states, no matter where it is, middle of the country, bigger states like California, Texas, whatever, New York, more heavily populated states. It doesn't matter whether you're there, you're in the Rust Belt, you're in the Deep South, doesn't matter. Bernie Sanders focuses on getting the people that are part of the they're part of the grassroots campaign, giving him $27 an hour, per donation on average, and those are the people that he wants to deal with. He doesn't need to get a $175,000 database, voter database from the party that screwed him over in 2016. The people that he honestly shouldn't be trusting, and the people that will ultimately try and screw him over in this primary, just like they did in 2016. So if Elizabeth Warren wants to be part of that little group and she wants to be associated with that, and she's so desperate to beat Trump that she needs to get this voter database and then she needs to get bankrolled by a donor, then that's her prerogative. But that shows that she's not principled, and it shows that she doesn't really care about her so-called fundraising pledge, no matter how much her campaign or aides or spokespeople want to pretend like she is, because ultimately she's not following that pledge, and she's doing and if she is following it, she's following it very opportunistically, and I don't like it. So the last story we're going to do here is going to be about Pete Buttigieg. So obviously, as you guys know, Pete Buttigieg, he's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and he's being seen by many people in the Democratic Party as being this so-called rising star, and he's really loved by the establishment because he's gay, he's a young guy, he speaks 6 different languages. Norwegian apparently is one of them, and they see him as like this big time intellectual guy. In reality, he can barely even run his own town, which is consists of 100,000 population. He can barely even run that town. So I still don't see how he would even be remotely decent as president. But honestly, I don't even think he's going to be able to get there. But that's just me. But anyway. So in true corporate Democrat, opportunistic politician form, Pete Buttigieg apparently is now in bed with Goldman Sachs, or at least somebody that used to work at Goldman Sachs. So this article is from CNBC. It's titled, Pete Buttigieg hires former Goldman Sachs executive as national policy director. And this article is from July 18th or July 19th, one of those. So let's get into the details here. So it says Democratic presidential contender Pete Buttigieg has hired a former Goldman Sachs vice president and Google executive to run his policy shop. His campaign announced Thursday. Sonal Shah, now executive director of the Beek Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown University, will be the campaign's national policy director. Shah worked at Goldman Sachs from 2004 to 2007 as a vice president, according to her LinkedIn page. She then worked for Google as its head of global development initiatives from 2007 to 2009. The hiring comes as Buttigieg, mayor of South Bend, Indiana, struggles to stake out a clear niche for himself in a crowded Democratic field featuring a number of high-profile progressives. And then this next part, the campaign, they defend this hire as someone being involved in environmental issues. So check it out. It says, in a statement, Buttigieg's national press secretary, Chris Meagher, said that while at Goldman, Shah, quote, wasn't involved in any deals, nor did she benefit from any deals. Yeah, right. Who the fuck believes that? Quoting him further here, it says, she developed and managed Goldman Sachs' environmental strategy. She trained bankers to ask environmental questions, managed the grants to nonprofits, and worked with their real estate team on how to build more green buildings. Okay, see, this is the typical neoliberal corporate Democrat strategy of being like, oh, look, even though I was working for a, corrupt bank that, gave out toxic mortgages and helped tank the economy, don't worry, we were involved in environmental initiatives. We were doing things for the green economy. See how great we are. See how wonderful we are. We care about the environment so much. We're total, lovers of the environment. We love animals and we love green technology and we love Teslas and yeah. You're not in. This person is not an pretending as if this person is some sort of environmental champion pushing for ways to prevent climate change. Get the fuck out of here. And then further continuing on with the article, it says, in contribution records filed with the Federal Election Commission from the period, Shaw listed her occupation at varying times as a, quote, investment banker, quote, economist, and, quote, vice president. In early 2017, Shaw cheered President Donald Trump's hiring of Goldman executive Dina Powell, first as an economic assistant and later as deputy national security advisor. Isn't that a fucking red flag to people like this? Why are you cheering? First of all, that's not even a good thing, obviously, because Donald Trump being in bed with fucking Goldman Sachs is just as bad as Pete Buttigieg or Hillary Clinton, whoever, being in bed with them. So now all of a sudden, because somebody hired somebody that you knew or somebody that was in the same company that you were in is a good thing. So the right-wing president, the fucking fascist right-winger, getting this person is a good thing to the person that's being hired by a Democrat. And then this person apparently also worked for Barack Obama. It says the campaign emphasized Shah's time working as deputy assistant to the president and as director of the White House Office of Social Innovation and Civic Participation during the Obama administration. Quoting the same there was the press secretary of Pete Buttigieg. It says she worked at the Obama White House after the financial crisis. She doesn't advocate for companies. She cares about having the greatest social impact for people and finding new solutions to tough challenges that require the public, private, and social sectors to work together to find them, Meagher said. That's why she is teaching at Georgetown after leaving the White House. Yeah, wonderful. She's a woman of the people, apparently. At Georgetown, Schott was a professor and the founder of the Beek Center for Social Impact and Innovation. That center was founded with a $10 million donation from investor Alberto Beek, a former Lehman Brothers investment banker. Lehman Brothers was another company, another big bank that was involved in the financial crisis that led to the financial collapse of the United States, of the banking industry essentially, and led to our Great Recession, obviously. It says a former Lehman Brothers investment banker who is now focused on the mining, hotels, wealth management, telecom, and tech sectors, according to an online biography. So get a load of this bullshit, man. Not only does this person cheer on the fact that Donald Trump hired one of her buddies, who was from the same company, Goldman Sachs, another executive, as an economic assistant. And look at, Trump's fucking horrible economic record. So this person loves that this person is being hired to push the policies of the right-wing president. That's already bad enough. And on top of the fact that this person was obviously Goldman Sachs, that's already bad. But then she worked, She works for a center, and she's a professor and the founder of this center that received a $10 million donation from a guy that was an investment banker from Lehman Brothers. That is a huge red flag. I mean, that is crazy. This is what I'm saying, man. When it comes to Democrats not having any principles, having the nerve to do these things that clearly it's a problem. I mean, even this article was mentioning it. I didn't quote it, but this article was mentioning how, the kind of the existence of, the relationship that Goldman Sachs has had with various Democrats, as they did with Hillary Clinton, for example, was a big deal. This is a thing that progressives and the people on the left took big issue with, and we still take a big issue with it. So when Pete Buttigieg hires somebody from Goldman Sachs to be on he's a policy director, that's a big fucking deal. Because at the end of the day, this person is not getting hired for their environmental expertise. No, they're getting hired because this person is hired because ultimately their former employer, Goldman Sachs, is going to receive some sort of favor. They're going to receive some sort of, payback essentially for, because they allowed them to hire this person. And then it's, so you hired our former employee that did a wonderful job with our environmental shit. So we're going to applaud you for this, and then we're going to honor Pete Buttigieg as a wonderful person, and then we're going to honor our former employee for joining this wonderful campaign. And then what's Pete Buttigieg, President Pete Buttigieg going to do? He's going to give a handout. He's going to give more tax cuts and more essentially government handouts, basically. I forgot what they refer to them as. They do it a lot with gas and oil and gas companies too. It's it's basically money for it's what they call research and development. So that's what the Obama administration was doing a lot with oil and gas companies when he was president. He was giving research and development money. He was giving $500 million a year to random oil and gas companies for research and development. Now, that's not the same exact thing they do with companies with Goldman Sachs, but that's just one example of what happens. In this case, it's going to be, if it's not going to be something like that, it's going to be something like tax cuts and, lessening, regulations on the banking industry and, obviously deregulating Wall Street and stuff, and just giving more opportunities for, companies like Goldman Sachs to exist and keep screwing people over. So this guy makes this person his policy director. So what's she going to do? You think she's going to be involved? Oh, I'm only going to be involved in some environmental issues. No, you're going to be involved in issues where you're going to ask for former Mayor Pete Buttigieg, so-called, soon to be president, God forbid, to be pushing for more deregulation of Wall Street, hopefully bailing out Goldman Sachs the next time we have another financial downturn and a Great Recession. So we have to bail out Goldman Sachs because you hired me, you better bail out my former company here because all my friends are there and they let you hire me. I used to be at Goldman Sachs, I did, I'm doing them a favor by essentially, joining your campaign and making Goldman Sachs look good, because a former employee for Goldman Sachs is now working for a presidential campaign. That's a big deal, right? So obviously that's a big deal. So you better do for them as they want, or else I'm not going to be happy, and then I'm going to resign and shit like that. And I'm going to speak out against, about how you're not, holding to your promises, because these are definitely comes with strings attached. As I said in the last segment regarding, Elizabeth Warren and, fundraising for the DNC, this has strings attached. When you do this kind of favor for a person that works for, like, in this case, a campaign, and you go out and hire this person, and then you make them part of your campaign, you're going to have to do favors for them. And you're going to have to do things when, you're going to have to give in to their demands regardless of what they are. And, like I said before, the fact that they're affiliated with, a organization that got a $10 million donation from an investment banker that worked for Lehman Brothers, another company that caused the financial meltdown and the Great Recession, and was involved in all those shady acts of giving out toxic loans and all that stuff, just like Goldman Sachs was, involved in essentially where fraud was a business model, as I think that's quoting Bernie Sanders, that's what he said. So when you're affiliated with all those kind of corrupt companies, corrupt big banks and stuff, there's no way we should trust you. And then you're going and working for this guy as his policy director, where you claim you're just going to, give environmental advice. No fucking way. You're going to be giving advice on more shit than environment. And if you think we're that fucking stupid to fall for that and trust you to just be focusing on specific policies that involve our environment, then you must think you must be really naive if you think we're going to believe that. Because if you were actually if you were actually pushing for, environmental issues, you would have been fighting for climate change. You would have been fighting against climate change. You would have been fighting for lessening CO2 emissions and greenhouse gases. You wouldn't be going out there and talking about how, we, as an employee at Goldman Sachs, I was telling people to... Hold on, let me read this part here again because it's hilarious. It says she trained bankers to ask environmental questions, the fuck, managed the grants to nonprofits, okay, and worked with their real estate team on how to build more green buildings. But I mean, I don't understand that. So, but then why don't you go work for why don't you go work for an organization that puts an end to to CO2 emissions, to end the CO2 emissions that are being let out by oil companies when they're letting all those CO2 out into the environment? How can we don't stop that? No, you got to make green buildings for Goldman Sachs, because Goldman Sachs, apparently their buildings are letting out CO2 emissions and greenhouse gases. There's no fucking way anybody believes that this person is going to be some environmental person for idiot fucking moron Pete Buttigieg. Nobody fucking believes that. That's utter bullshit. So these people keep wanting to pull the wool over our eyes and thinking that they can fool us. This shit is not going to work, and it's not ever going to work. And if you think it's going to work, you're fucking crazy. All right, guys, that's going to be the end of our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been the Progressive Square. It was a great show. I was very happy to cover a lot of these important topics tonight. Before we get going, once again, don't forget to check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/ProgBlacksmith. If you can become a patron and give me a generous contribution, it would be greatly appreciated. Also, remember, if you want more information about this podcast, check out #TheProgSquare on Twitter. That will direct you to all of my live broadcasts on Periscope, as well as every segment I post on YouTube. So to my Periscope viewers and to my Facebook Live viewers, so thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you next weekend. Take care.